Good afternoon, welcome. Standing room only again. Okay, hi. I'm Trisha. I work for IntelliJ, for JetBrains. I'm not at all nervous, by the way. I get really nervous giving this talk because I have like a million tips to tell you, all of which are here. I can't remember which ones come in which order, and I want to show all of them, so I get super excited. But it does mean I end up also being like super nervous about what am I doing? What do you want? What are you interested in? Hi. I'm Trisha. I work for JetBrains. I am the IntelliJ idea advocate and Java advocate. This is one of those rare talks where I actually talk about the IDE specifically, the tips on how to use IntelliJ IDEA. Who is using IntelliJ IDEA? Well, that's good. Okay, that's a good start. Who's using Eclipse? Okay, watch and learn. Right, so this is basically all the slides I have. Now we're going to go straight into the tips. Like I say, I've got a whole bunch of tips. I don't expect you to memorize all of these. I expect you to know some of these, I hope. I really would like you to come away with just like one or two tips that you didn't know before. So if you'd like to snooze in the middle of this, that's fine. It's no problem. Just as long as you come away with like one tip, and I'd like you to tweet what that tip is. That would be amazing. And then my work here is done. I'm totally justified flying all the way here from Spain. Right, let's get started. This is IntelliJ IDEA. It is an IDE for writing Java code. This is the kind of default way that it looks when you open it. So you usually get like obviously the editor window and the project window, and you might have you've got tabs at the top, and you've got a navigation window. And as you can see, I'm using the mouse. Right, all of this is wrong. Okay. Don't use the mouse. Don't have the navigation window. Don't have tabs. Put the tab placement. By the way, I'm using, so the shortcuts will appear at the bottom. Can everyone see the bottom? No. Can I put it? I can put it to the top if that's easier. Yeah, one person said yes. Okay, who's for top? Who's for bottom? This sounds a bit kinky. I'm a bit worried. I think top wins. This talk is really not going the way I expected it to go. Presentation. So this is a plugin called Presentation Assistant, which is usually the top tip that people take away from this is enable Presentation Assistant. I'm going to have it appearing at the top, and then when I press the shortcut, you should see it at the top. So the main shortcut that I use when I don't know what I'm doing, because I don't remember the shortcut, is Shift, Control, and A. And this is the magic find action shortcut, which will allow you to find a lot of things, specifically actions. But even that is like too difficult to remember. The only shortcut you need to remember is double tap Shift. Search everywhere. Find anything. So you're going to find classes, files, symbols, actions, settings, plugins, whatever you want. So what was I doing? I was trying to turn the tabs off. I want to say tab placement none. So we don't have any of those tabs, and I'm going to use Control, Shift, and F12 to maximize my editor. Okay. I've also turned off editor breadcrumbs, which is sometimes there. There are two other things that you can use if you want to focus on just the code. There is distraction-free mode and presentation mode. And even though I spend most of my career giving presentations in IntelliJ IDEA, I don't use presentation mode. But the reason is that if we show this presentation mode, it all goes away. It's not the same as using IntelliJ IDEA as an IDE. And what I want to do is I want to show you how to use IntelliJ IDEA the way that you'd work on it at home. At work. And apparently find action doesn't work in... Oh, there we go. So that also makes everything else a bit bigger, so I guess it's easier to see. And there's distraction-free mode, which is supposed to allow you to focus on just the code. But I generally prefer to have my IDE in like normal mode anyway. So let's exit distraction-free mode and go back to normal mode. So you should basically be using keyboard shortcuts for everything, and you should be maximizing the use of the editor so that you can actually work on the Java, because that's generally what we're doing. And then we're going to use all our navigation shortcuts. So, like I said, if you don't remember any of these, use double tap Shift and you can search anywhere. But what I want to do is, I usually use Control N. So this is Windows. I'm using a Windows machine. I use a Mac at home. You should be able to see both sets of shortcuts appear at the top. So you can use Control-N to get to a specific file. You can use Control-Shift-N, sorry, to get to a class. You can use Control-Shift-N to get to a file of any type. And you can use Control-Alt-Shift-N to get to a symbol. So, I don't know, toString, for example. And then when you're doing those things, it also supports camel case. So I can say something like, where is it? Extract functional parameter. So I can use EFP to navigate to extract functional parameter, or I can use partial names as well. So let's see, is there something? Yeah, strings or multi-line strings. So if I kind of know something is in a file name, I can navigate to it fairly easily. So we shouldn't be using the project window and opening this folder and opening that folder and navigating down. There's no need for any of that. We should just jump straight to it. It's also particularly useful, you know, if you're working in code bases where there's always like this one method or this one file that needs changing, you're just going to jump straight there. Right, so go to symbol, go to file. So I do have a list. I will have to check my notes. Quick definition. Oh, I don't even know what that is. Oh, right, so let's go to customer repository. One of the things that I found quite useful is you can navigate to implementations. Oh, that's type declaration. Oh, yes, so Control Alt and B. If you're at an interface or abstract class, you can use that to drill down to specific implementation. Or you can use Control B to navigate to the type that your cursor is on. So that allows you to navigate backwards and forwards, or drill in and step out. Or you can use Control Alt arrows to go backwards and forwards between the files you just changed. Mostly, I do use those things, but mostly what I use is Control E to look at recent files. And that allows me to show not only recent files, which I can search for. In pretty much any IntelliJ IDEA window, you can type something and it will search. Like, I'd been working with IntelliJ IDEA for about 5 years before I realized this. You can just start typing and it will find the thing in the window for you. So I can search for something in here. I can also, ooh, that's a new one. This is not working very well, is it? Because it's all on top of each other. Recent files. So recent files also has all of the windows at the side. So I can use keyboard shortcuts to bring up the windows if I want. So it's Alt-9 for local changes, Alt-F12 for the terminal, for example. But often, it either doesn't have a keyboard shortcut or I don't remember what it is. So I go to Control-E and I type, for example, Gradle to open the Gradle window. And then I can open it there. So like Control-E is kind of your go-to. I believe Control-Shift-E will take you to recent locations. So that's not just the files that you've opened, but the snippets of code that you've recently been working in. So you can see here, I've got 2 locations inside Java 8 inspections. And then I can just go directly to a specific place that I was in a file. This is new. This is new in 2018.1, 2019.1, I think. OK. So that's navigation. I talked a bit about search everywhere. Search everywhere, like I said, you can find specific files, but also you can do things like, there are commands as well. So I can look for editor settings, for example, or I can look for, what else have we got? Inspections, which I can turn on or off as well. So search everywhere is like super powerful, lets you basically get to anything that you want to. This is not going to be a super cohesive talk. This is just basically going to be firing stuff at you, by the way. Search everywhere. Let's see. Where are we now? Navigating backwards and forwards. I showed that. Bookmarks and favorites. I never use that, so I'm not going to show that. Coding assistance. All right, so one of my favorite things is Control-W, which lets you expand and contract your selection of your code in a context-sensitive fashion. Oops, not like that. It's a different shortcut on the Mac because Control-W will close the window for you, which is not super useful. You can move code up and down, which will move it as a whole block into something more useful. So this, I'm actually pressing down. It won't let me move it down because it won't let me move it outside of that method. But I can also, let's see. Oh no, I've forgotten what the keyboard shortcuts are for the Windows machine. Quickly, move on and no one will notice. Multi-caret. Right, let's talk about multi-cursor. HTML. So, who's using IntelliJ IDEA or WebStorm to edit HTML? Quite a few of you. One of the things I quite like about it, because in the olden days, when I was doing HTML editing, when I was young and stupid, more stupid, is that you do it in a text editor, and it was kind of a bit of a pain in the neck. But if you do it in IntelliJ IDEA, you can do things like when you edit one tag, it will automatically edit the closing tag for you. That's nice. That's like obviously what an IDE is for. And you can do things like, you can have things like column select mode, which I can't remember the keyboard shortcut for, so we find action, and I turn that on, and then I can do column select mode here, which is generally, I find that useful, not so much in Java, because honestly your Java code shouldn't be written in a way where column select mode is a useful thing to do. But for things like HTML files or XML files, sometimes this is kind of useful. Like if, for example, I wanted to edit both of these at the same time, I could do that at the same time. And that will automatically edit the closing tag as well. And there's also multi-cursor, so I could say, is it control? I could say, I want to put my, no, it's not control, multi-cursor. Alt, Shift, and Mouse. To put my cursor in like 3 different places, or however many places I want to, and then just like write something there, write the same stuff there. So the multi-cursor thing is particularly useful. Again, I have not used this in Java code because I don't think Java code you should be using things like multi-cursor. You should be using things like refactoring. Let's see. Should we look at some refactoring, or should we look at something else? Let's see. If I do this here, will it break? All right. So one of my favorite things is to do reformat code. Obviously, this is totally down to personal style because you don't want to reformat every single file all the time because like your colleagues hate you when you check in whitespace changes. But quite often, good practice, as you're coding along, you're going to want to reformat according to the specs that you have. So you can use Control-Shift-L to, no, there we go, Control-Alt and L. You can do Control-Alt-Shift and L to change the settings of that. So I want to change the whole file, maybe optimize imports, rearrange code, and then it will reformat everything so everything is nice and neat, which is what we like to see. Related to that, organize for code. Am I in presentation mode? Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Right. Oh, yeah, okay. So, one of my favorite features is the fact that IntelliJ IDEA will basically generate all of your code for you, so you don't have to write anything. So let's start by creating ourselves. We have a new class, so Alt and Insert on Windows, but the Microsoft Surface laptop does not have an insert key. So Alt and Insert doesn't work unless you map one of the other keys to be Insert. Top tip. So new Java class. So obviously I'm going to call it, I don't know, main. Let's call it main. We'll create our new class, which we can't see because of the tips. Let's hide all the windows. We're going to use live templates. So who knows about the live template, public static void main? Hands up if you've used that. Good, excellent, you are a good audience. Have a biscuit. Sorry, that's very patronizing, sorry. This is like my super favorite live template because, you know, you're not writing main methods all the time, but when you are writing a main method, you don't want to type public static void main, you just type PSVM. And obviously, similarly for system out, you can press out, and then you can do whatever you want to here. Hello. So you get code generation through things like live templates. You can get code generation through things like, why don't we have a private string name, for example, and we say, IntelliJ goes, oh, well, you're not really using this. Fine. So I'm going to Alt-Enter, because you all know Alt-Enter just fixes everything for you, right? Yeah, good. If there's one thing you can take away from this, dear Eclipse users, is use Alt-Enter if in doubt. So what is the error here? So private field name is never used, so IntelliJ goes, OK, what can we do about that? We can add a constructor parameter. So that's fine. That will generate my constructor parameter and assign it to the field. I didn't have to write any of that. That's great. It's still not being used, so we're going to create a getter for our name as well. Great. So we'll create all of those things. What else do we need? We're going to generate a equals and hash code method. We'll just use the default template. There's a bunch of different ways to generate equals and hash code. I'll just use the default. I only have one field in here, so we'll just select that, do all of that. So pretty. I don't see what's wrong with Java and all the boilerplate that's in it. And a toString. We'll generate our toString as well. Now, obviously, this is kind of generating, there's a bunch of generated code. It's generally generated at the place where you have the cursor, so it's not always in the best possible location. You can then, if you want, you can rearrange code. And then that should rearrange code in a useful way. So now we have fields at the top, constructors at the top, methods here, and then the overridden methods right at the bottom, and our private methods right at the very bottom. You can set those settings however you want, but I found this like a super useful way so that your class files, particularly if you've got generated methods, your class files are structured in some kind of useful fashion. You can also do that. Let's undo that. If you are doing the reformat code, which I did earlier, so Alt, Shift, and L, oops, sorry, let's undo that. You can say rearrange code when you're reformatting. So you can rearrange the whole file, optimize your imports, rearrange your code. Code cleanup is have IntelliJ like fix all of your inspection warnings for you. I think that's probably something you should go through and check automatically rather than just check individually rather than do it automatically. So run all of that. So now you've got a file which is beautifully formatted. You've got all of the imports optimized, and you've got everything in exactly the right order. And you've only got 45 lines of code, and you only had to write like 3 names. You had to write your name here, and you had to write this here, and IntelliJ wrote everything else for you. If that's not boilerplate, I don't know what is. Right, so we've got different types of completion as well. So let's see, what have we got on here? Have we got a good thing for this? Completion. These examples are all available in GitHub. There'll be a link. Oh, there'll be a link at the end. I don't have a link at the end. It's under the JetBrains account on GitHub, code samples. So you can use all of these code samples to try stuff out if you want to. So what have we got? We have, I don't have normal completion. So obviously, when you type a dot, you get all the stuff that you can use for completion. If you are doing something like, have I got smart completion? So let's do something like int I, and then we do something like this dot I equals this dot. Now, by default, you'll just get any of the options here. If you do smart completion, you will end up with, no, that's not, that's right. Smart completion is shift, control, and space. And it will either give you a sub-list of everything which returns the correct type, in this case an integer, or in this case, if you do smart completion, it just finds the only value which returns the correct type and just assigns it automatically. In a related tip, Control, Shift, and Enter will complete the current statement. This is one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts. So here it just added a semicolon, so I didn't have to type it. Fine. So I pressed 3 keys instead of 1. Win. But if I'm doing something like if something, and then I complete current statement, it will give me the curly braces, or there's a bunch of other things. So complete current statement will just basically add all of the stuff around the statement that you're currently in. I use it all the time. Hippie completion. I demo hippie completion all the time, and I still don't really know who would use it. Does anyone use hippie completion? Okay, I was really hoping someone would tell me what they use it for. Right, fine. So what you can do is you do, let's see. So if I start this, obviously, if I type something, it gives me the drop-down for normal completion. If I do Alt and forward slash, it will cycle through all of the relevant things that it could be. So that's fine. Or I can even do this with, if I say T, I can do it with text values as well. So it'll just cycle through and give me something. So it just allows you to automatically pick some different types. It's kind of interesting. I feel like it's something I should use, but I haven't really used it. That's just interesting. Postfix completion. So I tweeted about this week, so perhaps a bunch of you have already seen this. But postfix completion is one of my favorite things. Yeah, like I've got 352 tips, and like 75 of them are my favorite thing ever. So postfix completion, you can do something like, so obviously when you press a dot, you get all the methods that you can call on a particular symbol. But if you press up, you have nothing. Amazing. Oh, it's because I said string, not strings. If you press up, then you have all of these weird things, and these are your postfix completion. It's a bit like live templates, but it's done after the fact of typing something. So for example, I might want to do, so I have a list of strings, so I might want to iter over that. And postfix completion will allow me to iterate over those. It's the same, we can do live templates for this as well, so I can iter over that way. That's fine. Or I can use postfix completion. The point about postfix completion is to be always typing forwards. So it's very useful for just continuing on. That's great. One of the other things I really like postfix completion for is casting. So strings. And then you can cast. And it will automatically do that tedious thing with all the brackets that you need to have for casting. Okay, so I'm going to cast this to an object because, I hate the person who's going to read the code afterwards. And you press enter, and it will take you to the right place to start doing something on object. So yeah, postfix completion. Every time you press dot, have a look up to see if there's something interesting. You can do all sorts of things like strings. So let's do iter, and then let's do string not null. And that will do a check to see if the string is null or not, and then you can do string dot set. No, I can't do that. I'll do it the other way. I'll do it with this. So you'll notice if you type sout, you have a bunch of different options here. If I type sout v, it should give me the option of outputting string like that. So then it will just say what the variable name is. You can do it with parameters, you can do it with variables, or you can just do sout if you want to. Okay. Parameter hints. You probably know this now because it's been around for a little while now. Has anyone turned off parameter hints in their code base? One person. Are people using parameter hints? Okay, that's cool. I know a few people who really hate it. I really like parameter hints for primitive types and strings and nulls, particularly, I think, for nulls. Because I've worked on code bases where you have something like this. Let's turn off the parameter hints for a bit. Disable hints. And you look at a method call like this, and you're like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what those nulls are. And you can press Ctrl and P to find out what the parameters are. That's useful. But parameter hints is more useful. Can I re-enable that now? Probably not. Parameter. Oops. Oh, no. Parameter hints. OK. And I've just turned it off. So parameter name hints are also now available in enums, which they didn't used to be. Language injections. I get so excited about all of these things. I'm so sorry. JSON. Have we got injections? All right, so this is not super unusual, particularly I think in test code, but also in production code. you might have a bunch of text which has context in its own right. So here we have a bunch of JSON string. We have a JSON string, and here we have a SQL string. If you use Alt-Enter, because obviously this is our magic incantation for everything, we can say inject language or reference, and I'd like to inject JSON, and then it should ignore me utterly. OK, usually it then does some useful text highlighting, some JSON-style text highlighting. Let's do it with SQL and see if that works better. Alt-Enter, inject, SQL. Yes, and then we get text highlighting, and we should also get some code completion. So that actually allows us to, even if we're working inside strings, which obviously in Java has like no type, we can get like code completion and things. Oh, look, now it worked. Code completion and some error checking and things inside our text values. So this is particularly useful if we have strings which represent other languages like JSON or JavaScript or SQL or whatever. Let's see if we can get an error. So what happens if I put a space in there? So then it will give me an error, and it will say this needs to be key value types. Regular expressions. Oh, we all love regular expressions, right? So we can use this to inject regular expressions. And that will give us, again, some highlighting. And we should be able to, oh, I don't remember how to do this, because I try not to use regular expressions like ever. Oh, it's got code completion. That's right. So if I make this a regular expression, then it should be able to give me some errors, like saying you need a group name here. So for working with things like this is like super helpful, because especially regular expressions, right? Because it's just like, I mean, obviously you're way more experienced than me, but every time I look at one, I'm like, no, I don't know what that means. And IntelliJ can help us with that. Right. Oh, and apparently you can have emoji in the editor. Oh, I didn't put it in here. Oh, that's a shame. Oh, I'm kind of sad about that. I wanted to show the emoji. Oh, no, it's in multi-line strings. Oh, look, see? Apparently you can use emoji everywhere in IntelliJ, including in commit messages and like probably, I don't know, folder names? I really don't know. I'm sure your operating system is going to have something to say about that. But it supports emoji everywhere. I mean, I think maybe I'm a bit old for that. I don't know. But it's fun. Especially because I like the idea of using emoji to like say nice things instead of being like, this is a piece of... You're like, oh, well done. This is really lovely. Right. Invert. Let's look at refactoring, because refactoring is my favorite thing. So you can use refactorings like, again, using Alt-Enter on everything. We can invert if conditions. So here we say if not is valid, print something. This might be a bit easier if I say something a bit more obviously different. And if I want to, I can Alt-Enter and invert that condition, and it will flip everything around. So this can be useful for readability. Obviously, it's generally more difficult to read statements that have nots in. So if you come across a not, you might want to flip that so it's a more positive, more readable thing. And obviously, if it's a Boolean flag, it's a bit of a silly example. But when you've got something a bit more complicated, you might want to get IntelliJ to invert that for you so that it's more readable and still does the same thing. It can be quite smart as well. So for example, in a recent version of Java, I think it was 11, they added, optional.isPresent has been there obviously since Java 8, but you can actually now flip this. If you invert this, IntelliJ will pick the new method isEmpty, which is from Java 11. So instead of simply notting isPresent, it will use an inverse operation if one is available. Let's look at, I won't show all of these because a lot of these are my favorite. I work at the right company because I really like what IntelliJ does. So I've got loads and loads of Java 8 inspections. Every time we add a new inspection, I add code into this file to show like how to use them. A lot of them are things which you've probably used. Who's using Java 8? Who's using something before Java 8? Okay. So that's cool, actually. So for the poor people who are not using Java 8, these are kind of useful for you, because when you migrate, you'll be able to automatically turn things like this into stream operations like this. So this is quite a complicated one. It had a for, an if, a for, an if, and some concatenation, counting, basically, and it figured out that actually that's the same as this. I do highly recommend that you have automated tests, by the way, just in case. Refactoring is not a magic bullet. Be careful. But that's apparently the same thing. I mean, that's like super cool, and probably not a stream operation that I would have come up with. And so it does this for a bunch of these different things. So basically, you can just alt-enter your way through your code base to like streamify everything. Do performance testing, because it's not the same thing. But it's kind of interesting. Oh, look at this one. Oh, I'm just going to get so carried away. What does this do? Ooh. I don't even know what that is. Oh, also, look at this as well. I love this. The fact that it puts the types on each stream operation so you know where you are. The stream is, we had one, I don't even know what that is. A set of entries of strings of lists of strings becomes a stream of strings. Becomes a, ooh, very cool. I hope that's not real code that lived somewhere. Because I really pity the person who had to read that. Look at the original code. Like, I do not know what that means. Anyway, yes, carry on. So there's loads of Java 8 stuff which will just automatically turn your code into stream operations, which if you're using Java 8, you will have seen this in IntelliJ anyway, so I don't really need to show you. We just continually keep adding these things to it. When I was doing a live demo on how to migrate to Java 8 about 2-3 years ago, I created the live demo at the beginning of the year for QCon London and Devox UK, and it was all great. And then every time I gave that talk, our development team were like adding new inspections every time just to mess with me. So every time I was like, oh, this doesn't, oh, it just totally refactors in a completely new way. Oh, it's kind of cool. It was living dangerously. And then there's a bunch of stuff around optional as well for Java 8. Let's not get carried away, because I already have a whole talk on this from 2-3 years ago. And we've got a bunch of stuff. So specifically optional inspections, these are really useful because every version of Java since Java 8, so 9, 10, 11, have all added new methods to optional. And IntelliJ IDEA is generally keeping up with how to simplify a lot of these optional things so that it looks a lot simpler than it was. Well, what does that do? Oh, and then we've got dataflow analysis as well, which says, like, you don't need this is silly. And then it goes, oh, you don't need that either. Just press Alt-Enter until everything goes away. What else have we got? Have we got anything interesting on Java 11? I think I showed this morning anyway. So we've got predicate not. We have some stuff around, like the Java 11 stuff is not super exciting. Java 12, I showed this morning as well. So Java 12, we can turn this into a switch expression. But basically, all of this is IntelliJ writes your code for you. No, you write code, IntelliJ makes it prettier. Not necessarily better, because you did a great job first time round. It's just, sometimes things can be prettier. Refactoring, extract functional parameter. Extract functional parameter. This is one of the cool things I found when I was learning how to do Java 8, because it's one thing to use Lambda expressions, it's another thing to create methods that take Lambda expressions, because they use functional interfaces to provide Lambda expressions, which is kind of a bit weird. So let's say I want to turn this into a Lambda expression that gets passed into this method. So I use the handy incantation of Control-Shift-Alt-P. Extract functional parameter, it will automatically say, look, you can use any of these functional interfaces to represent this functional parameter. So I'm going to use the standard let's use by function from Java. This is actually updated recently. So then I get a method which takes a by function, and then I get a Lambda expression to put in here. So I think that's kind of cool, because the way we represent Lambda expressions for functional parameters, it's just sometimes you'll do this and go, no, I didn't want to do that in the first place. Can we actually inline this? No. Ooh. I don't think I wanted to do that. Refactoring is not a magic bullet, people. Right, so we've got, extract delegate. Extract delegate. So refactoring, you've probably already used like extract variable, extract field, extract method, because those things are like super useful. We can also, this is a weird place to do it. This is not how I would have chosen to do it. Not my code. Obviously, my code would be much better. And so I'm going to replace inheritance instead. So one of the things that I don't really like using inheritance to share code because it's just not a good way of doing stuff. So I like to replace inheritance with, replace inheritance with delegation. So you can get IntelliJ idea to replace the superclass with, instead of inheriting from the superclass, you have a delegate instead. And then it will delegate down to that. So it'll automatically reshape your code for you. So it's not just like a single variable that you can refactor to, but you can do much bigger refactorings around extracting interfaces or replacing inheritance with delegation, etc. Moving on. Oh, I've got loads of examples. Dataflow analysis. You've seen these probably in your code as well, where IntelliJ idea says, like these calls don't make any sense. The values that you have are always particular values. One of the things, I want dataflow analysis for arrays. So you can actually, so here we have an array, which has got days in months. You kind of know what that means. And what the dataflow analysis is figuring out what these values are as you get to various complicated bits of your if statements. Let me see if I can remember what the handy incantation is for. Ctrl-Shift-P. So press Ctrl-Shift-P twice. Ctrl-Shift-P. Oh, it doesn't work. Shift-Control-P. No. Oh, what have I done? Oh, I know. Talk amongst yourselves, it's fine. Okay, fine. Yes, so let's do it here. So we can do things like, IntelliJ idea is figuring out what values certain things can be at certain points in your code. And you can have a look at this. So you can use Control-Shift-and-P twice, and it will show you the results of the dataflow analysis. At this point in time, date.getDay can return any int. At this point in time, can return any int. Oh, no. Oh, because it's month. Yeah. OK, that would be a lot more sense. Yeah, that's better. So at this point in time, date.getMonth can be 1 or 3 to 12. And then down here, it can only be 2. So it's doing some analysis about the values that are available there. Now, it can give you suggestions and warnings based on that, or you can use that information to make decisions around, like, how can I simplify this code? Like, if this is always 2, then I don't need to make certain checks, for example. So the dataflow analysis there's loads of different features there, so I just want to point out that it's there, and it can be very useful for helping you to simplify your code. For example, I use it all the time to go, when it tells me this can't be null or this can be null, then I'm like, I'll believe you. If you say it can't be null, I don't have to do a null check. Right, we've got 12 minutes left. What's really interesting to work with? Let's see. We've got working with tests, we've got the debugger, we've got working with databases, working with version control. Oh my goodness, like I could do like 3 hours on version control alone. Right, I will do a little bit on version control because this is one of my favorite pet peeves. Alt-N. So you all know about the local changes tab. Are we mostly using Git? Okay, everyone's using Git. Who's not using Git? CVS? Really? The people who aren't using Git, you are using version control, right? Because I've seen that too. So yeah, so you see in local changes, that's fine. You can use Control-K to commit, and that will bring up your commit dialog, which obviously shows you all the stuff you know, all the files you can commit. You get to use your commit messages. Let's hide the diff. You know, I hope, that there's a history of all your commit messages, so you can reuse past commit messages if you want. You can also do, I quite often do find myself occasionally doing amend commit, which is a little bit naughty, but it is possible to do. Quite often, especially because if I'm doing changes to the demo code, I'll sometimes forget to check in one particular file, so then I'll use amend commit to add that to the previous commit. And of course, you can do stuff automatically, like reformat your code, rearrange your code, optimize imports and stuff as you check in. Fairly recently new in IntelliJ IDEA, some version I can't remember, we have added partial commits, the support for partial commits. So you don't have to commit that bit if you don't want to. I was like horrified by this because I'm a firm believer in making sure you commit frequently, small commits, everything has to compile, all the tests have to pass. Partial commits just sound like something which allow you to check in something which is not going to compile. But there are cases where you're going to be like, no, actually, those changes aren't supposed to go in. So I will just not check in those changes, for example. So that's like new and super useful. My favorite feature about version control is the log view, because I sort of see things in a very, what do you mean I don't have any commits? I'm a very visual person, so I kind of like to see things visually. So the log view is quite useful for that, so I can see my branches. This is not the best project to demonstrate this stuff because it's mostly me just doing small commits, like adding emojis. And obviously, you can see the branches here. You can filter things by, you can select which branches you want to see. You can filter by user. I use this view quite a lot to figure out how and where to branch, how and where to merge. So if I have a branch, should we try and do a branch? Let's create a branch here. Well, this is not really going to work because it's not a great demo for this. So I can do new branch. I don't have to check, oh, look. New branch. You like it? Fixed. I can create that branch and I can check out that branch, or I don't have to. I can just create it there. And it should pop up here in a minute. There we go, new branch. And I can do things like, let's create a new branch here. I'm using the mouse, actually. I don't actually know what the shortcut is for this. Don't tell anyone. Changes. Let's commit the changes. Everything. Oh my goodness, don't do code analysis because it slows everything down for demos, especially when this code is specifically designed to fail code analysis. No, I would like to commit my 61 warnings, yes. And then let's say I want to, let's switch to the new branch. So I'm going to, this is very mousy and very visual, but I find this useful for kind of figuring out where on earth I am. Obviously, my yellow sticker will tell me where I am. I'm on a new branch, so I can do things like, if I want to, I can cherry pick this branch. And it will allow me to do this. Let's see. Cherry pick. Oh, I'm still doing the code analysis. Yes, I would like to commit my 61 warnings. There we go. So then I can do cherry picking, and I can do merging and rebasing and things like that. So I like to use the log view a lot just to make sure that I haven't really messed up something. Generally speaking, so I do kind of complicated stuff around version control because I often do workshops where I'm specifically trying things in a particular order. I think when you're doing real development, I don't think you should be messing with your branches. I don't think you should be deleting commits or reordering commits. I think that's a terrifying, frightening thing to do. Because I've seen that when you start then trying to find out who introduced this change that broke this thing in 5 years' time, it doesn't work. Right, what else should we see? Should we see a bit of debugging and running? We've got 7 minutes left. Let's look for alphabet test. So I took away the navigation bar, so obviously you can't run anything anymore. Well, that's not true, obviously. Control-Shift... Oh, every time I end up with replacing path. Control-Shift F10 in Windows. No. Talk amongst yourselves. All right, I'm going to use the mouse. Fine. It said Control-Shift F10. I just pressed that. Are you not listening to me? Right, so I quite often use the run run in context. What are you doing? To run a test, these things allow you to run either the whole class or a particular method. Obviously, I'm going to have some errors because I purposefully wrote some errors and things. I can rerun tests using Ctrl F5. Oh, please don't fail me now. Rerun. Alt-Shift-R. Alt-Shift-R. Rerun tests. Are you not listening to me? Oh my goodness. It was all going so well. Fine. Let's go back to our test. Let's rerun our test. I'm a bit confused about the fact that I seem to still be in presentation mode. Exit. Oh, don't exit everything. Oh, thank goodness. Right. Oh, my goodness. Whoever did that was trying to give me a heart attack. Right, fine. So I've run it. Obviously, you've seen this before. You've got your run window and stuff like that. What I wanted to show is that you can run with coverage, and that will put in your gutter, like whether certain parts of your test classes are covered by, whether certain parts of your production code are covered by tests or not. And you can do, have I got another test which is better? You can obviously breakpoint and debug, etc. Control-Shift-D. Okay, and then in your debug thing, which now I've taken us out of presentation mode, you can't really see, you can see the variables. There aren't that many. You get your inline comment style display of what's going on. You can add watch expressions, so I can say this dot, I don't know, there's nothing in here, so I have to say this dot toString. That's fine. You get code completion. Ooh, that's not available. Let's remove that. Add a new watch expression, s dot, I don't know, split. So you can put any old watch expression in there, and it will give you an illegal argument exception. And you can use, obviously, you can step over and step in, and you kind of know that stuff, so that's kind of fine. What did I really want to show you with debugging? Oh, yeah, drop frame. Oh, this is not a great example, but I can, if I'm in the middle of debugging, let's say, and I've made a few steps, and I'm like, well, I don't really want to be here, I've made some changes, and this is not what I want, then I can easily just drop frame to go back to where I was. Please tell me I'm using the demo version of IntelliJ IDEA. I'm quite often using, this is my excuse, I'm quite often using the EAP version, so very occasionally you get some strange behavior that wasn't really working. But the idea about, oh, it did work though, I did drop the frame. So drop frame took me back where I was and allows me to go back in and rerun the stuff again. So it allows me to kind of play with stuff and set different state. You can also do evaluate expression to let me do things like, what could I do? I can do count consonants, for example, and this will give me the result of evaluating a specific expression as well. So this is really useful when you're sort of debugging on the fly. Right, 2 minutes left, so, and that allows, I would say, 20 questions of 1 second each. I do have a few more tips, but I really want to give the opportunity to say, like, are there any questions or any things at this point in time that people want to see? Yes?
Would you be so kind to open this version control window?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any shortcut to switch between these tabs, between local changes and log, for example?
Yeah. Is there a shortcut?
Yeah.
I knew you were going to ask me that, or someone was. My husband asked me that like last week, and I was like, I actually don't know the answer to that question. And then he came back to me and told me what the shortcut was, and I can't remember what it was. It involves a tab somewhere. Shift tab, control shift, control tab. I don't know. There is one, and I suggest you Google it. Because, yeah, I use the mouse all the time to get there, and I shouldn't. I would like a keyboard shortcut that takes me directly to there. So you can assign keyboard shortcuts for specific things that you do as well. Oh, which reminds me. No, I'll take some more questions before I show something else. Any more questions or things? Is that a question? Is there a way to check the code complexity? I I'm going to say yes, but I don't really know specifically what you need. If you're, come up to me in the booth after this, and we can talk about it, because we've got some of the other experts in the booth, okay? And I wanted to show that so if there's one shortcut that I want you to take out of this, if you didn't already know it, it's the double tap shift to search everywhere, which allows you to search all these different types of things. You can actually do things like, so if, for example, you're always searching for one particular thing, you can add, what's it called, abbreviations. Let's go to settings and look for abbreviations. Key map abbreviations. And you can look for something like gradle. I can add an abbreviation to the gradle tool window. I added one, it's the GRD. And then when I search everywhere, I can type GRD, and it will give me a top hit for gradle. So as well as assigning keyboard shortcuts to stuff, you can also assign abbreviations so you can easily find it if it's something you do quite a lot. That's not all I've got, but that's all the time I've got. They're going to kick me off the stage. Thank you very much.